What made you call the police on your child's school? My son came home with straight A's on his report card for the first time ever. I was thrilled until I noticed something strange. Jake had been struggling with math all year, barely passing his tests. I put in $200 for a tutor just last month, I said, looking at his perfect math grade. He shrugged, looking uncomfortable. Mrs. Peterson says I've really improved this semester. I frowned. That didn't make sense. Jake cried over homework every night, begging me to help him with basic multiplication. But I figured maybe the tutoring was finally paying off. The next report card, same thing. Perfect grades across the board in subjects he'd been failing weeks before. Jake, what's your secret? I asked over dinner. Nothing, Mom. I just started understanding everything better. He seemed genuinely nervous, avoiding eye contact. The grade thing was really bothering me. Jake had never been academically gifted. Something felt off. I started asking other parents at pickup. 3 other moms mentioned the exact same thing. Struggling students suddenly getting perfect scores. Teachers praising kids who'd never excelled before. That Friday, I was volunteering in the library when I overheard Mrs. Peterson talking to another teacher. These parents are so gullible, she whispered. They'll believe anything as long as their precious babies look successful. I don't care if half these kids can't even read at grade level. The state funding depends on our test scores. My blood ran cold. We just need to get through the state assessment next month, then we can go back to normal grades, she continued. The principal knows what we're doing. He's the one who suggested it. That weekend, I decided to do some detective work. I requested Jake's actual test papers from the past month. Hi, this is Jake Martinez's mom. Can you send me copies of his recent math tests? There was a long pause. Ma'am, we don't typically release test papers, but your son scored 95% on his last exam. I felt suspicious. That seemed impossible for a kid who couldn't multiply 7 times 8 without counting on his fingers. I immediately drove to the school and demanded to see Jake's actual test papers. The principal, Mr. Williams, looked increasingly uncomfortable. This is very unusual, he said, but pulled out Jake's file. What I found made my stomach drop. The test papers were covered in eraser marks and different handwriting. Every wrong answer had been erased and corrected in adult handwriting. The math problems Jake got wrong were fixed with solutions he'd never learned. That's when it clicked. The teachers were systematically changing students' answers after they turned in tests to inflate the school's performance ratings for state funding. I demanded to see other students' papers. Mr. Williams tried to refuse, but I threatened to call the state education department. What we found made my blood boil. Every single struggling student's test had been altered. Teachers were erasing wrong answers and filling in correct ones, rewriting essays, changing grades to make the school look successful. They'd been committing academic fraud for the entire school year while lying to parents about their children's progress. I walked back into Mr. Williams' office with copies of dozens of altered tests, my hands shaking. The principal tried to suggest we handle it internally, but I was already dialing the state education fraud hotline. Mrs. Peterson and 3 other teachers were suspended that same afternoon. 12 families discovered their children had been failing all year while being told they were succeeding. The school lost $2.3 million in state funding, and the principal was arrested for conspiracy to commit fraud. But the worst part, Jake had been begging for help with his homework every night, knowing he was failing, while his teachers told me he was thriving. The psychological damage to these kids was devastating.